Is Microsoft Unified Support busting your IT budget? You're not alone. US Cloud is the global leader in third-party Microsoft enterprise support. And we're helping enterprises slash support costs by 30 to 50% versus Microsoft Unified. All while getting faster response times from domestic engineers. No offshoring, no long waits, just expert support you can count on 24/7 by 365. Trusted by 50 of the Fortune 500 and offering senior-level engineers with an average of 14 years experience with Microsoft technologies, US Cloud is the smarter alternative for premium Microsoft support without the premium price. Ready to make the switch? Book a call at uscloud.com to get started.
Cloudcast Media presents from the massive studios in Raleigh, North Carolina. This is the Cloudcast with Aaron Delp and Brian Gracely, bringing you the best of cloud computing from around the world.
Hey everyone, a quick note on this interview. There was a hum in our guest Evan's audio, and we didn't catch it during recording. I did my best to filter it out, and hence there's a slight delay in getting the podcast out the door this week. Hopefully you won't notice it, but if you do, I just wanted everyone to know we tried our best to get rid of it, and it's happened on a few recent episodes, and we're definitely working on identifying root cause on this. If anyone out there, by the way, uses Riverside to record on a regular basis and has run into this, please let us know. With that out of the way, our topic this week is Deep Learning meets Cybersecurity with returning guest Evan Powell. It was great to catch up with Evan, and we hope you enjoy this interview. And that is coming up right after this quick break. This episode is sponsored by Postman. Postman is the world's leading API collaboration platform, and they just launched Postman AI Agent Builder, the quickest way to build AI agents. Start building at postman.com/podcast/cloudcast. Good morning, good evening, wherever you are, and welcome back to the Cloudcast. We're coming to you live from our massive Cloudcast studios here in Raleigh, North Carolina. And we have an interesting one this week. I feel like our theme here recently has been a lot of guests from the past as they do new things and move on. And this is really interesting, both personally and professionally, because we have Evan Powell, founding CEO at DeepTempo. And we're going to be talking about deep learning and impacts on cybersecurity today. But I have to say, first, welcome back to the show, Evan, because it's hard to believe it's been a little over 10 years since we last spoke back in your StackStorm days. So for those that didn't listen all the way back then, give everyone a quick introduction, please.
Great. Well, thanks for having me back, Aaron. And it's great to be back on Cloudcast. And yeah, I'm a multi-time builder. A lot of Linux Foundation projects, including StackStorm, or Cloud Native Computing Foundation projects like OpenEBS or Litmus Chaos and some others over the years. And a few years ago, I won't tell the whole story, but I went back to school at Stanford, took a couple grad level comp sci courses, and it was about the time ChatGPT was hitting, and eventually that led me here. So really excited to be back. I can't believe you guys are well over 900 shows now, and thank you for, as I said via email, doing what you do. I think it's really a big part of what helps IT make better decisions is transparent information. So thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you very much. So let's kind of jump in here. As I mentioned, our topic today is kind of this intersection of deep learning and cybersecurity, but let's start at a high level and then work our way down. As somebody who's kind of founded several companies at this point, what was interesting enough in this space for you to jump in and say, I want to go do that again?
Yeah, begin with the mission. I think I actually dabbled in, I was looking at, hey, what could I do around like carbon capture or something like this? You know, leave the world at least a better place for my daughter, et cetera. Those are a little bit far afield for me, but using data, building data-centric systems, that's my background. And look, at a high level, we're spending $250 billion a year on cyber. And that's going up. So it sounds like yay team. We're taking this seriously. The problem is, depending on who you believe, there are trillions of dollars being lost to cyber attacks. So it is a big mission, I think, to be a small part, at least, of better protecting, especially strategically important financials and so forth. And we can talk about that. And then I just saw an opportunity. It felt like, to be direct, it felt a little bit like the storage industry when we took it on with Nexenta. You know how trade shows sort of faded, and not in cyber, man. I mean, we're doing custom built tennis shoes for CISOs. We're giving them custom bottles of whiskey. We're doing all of the old things we used to do in the data world to get the attention of the execs making these decisions. And we're just flooding the zone with acronyms, right?
Of course.
And I just looked at it and said, what if we put something in the hands of practitioners? So not just deep learning, but a new approach to market that we can unpack. Couldn't we actually get a faster innovation cycle going in cyber? So I don't know. I just looked at it from the outside and said, boy, there's a lot of money being spent on marketing to semi or very technical CISOs. Seems ripe for disruption. The industry on the whole is losing. Let's go. It needs help.
Yeah. And it's interesting too, like when you talk about marketing directly to CISOs in particular too, we've talked about it on the podcast before. Like I completely admit a lot of, C-level roles. Hey, that sounds interesting. There's one you could never pay me enough money for, and that's the CISO role, because I feel like it is that whole concept of what they have to do and have to really execute perfectly.
Yeah.
It is just such a pressure cooker of a job
and legal risk. I mean, a big question for them is, so the directors and operations or officers, insurance, it covers me, right? Because otherwise it's dangerous out there. So a lot of sympathy for CISOs, but I also looked at the industry from the outside and felt like, we got to get to the detection engineers, et cetera. So that the CISOs then have users coming to them saying, I'm using this. It is valuable. What do you think, boss? Can we buy it? As opposed to, hey, these guys, again, gave me a cool bottle of whiskey at RSA. We should have a meeting with them.
Sure. Now, let's talk about that. Let's talk about some of those use cases and kind of what bubbles up. Especially, I feel like AI is just hitting this industry on both sides, right? And I always like to think about use cases because, like, if I kind of step back, like even like you were saying back, like storage days or infrastructure days, right? There's always like the big thing with AI is like, hey, there's a ton of data, and where do you want to go get insights into your data, no matter where it is, right? I think one of the biggest advantages of AI, like a lot of people will talk about agentic AI and Gen AI and all these other things, but at its most fundamental level, it's where do you have a lot of data and where do you want to get some insights into that, right? And it's this needle in the haystack scenario. Like, where is the needle in the haystack? And so, I mean, hey, it could be text, it could be unstructured data, log files, data lakes. I mean, there's so many different things out there. And first of all, I'll ask you, is that scenario apply to cybersecurity? And what are some of the leading use cases for cybersecurity?
Amen. My notes on this are amen, Bubba. That's exactly. And what we see is defense in depth. So, as you know, perimeter-based defenses and signature-based defenses, and even, you may or may not know, older machine learning-based defenses are having a hard time with polymorphic, i.e. evolving attacks, both coming from inside and outside. And so we're not the only ones saying this, obviously, but defense in depth. And so what we've done is trained what we call, or pre-trained, log LMs. And they're cousins of LLMs, but they are encoder only. And all that means is they don't hallucinate. Well, it means a lot of things, but one of the things it means is they do not hallucinate. They can't hallucinate. They're not generative. And they're very good at needle from the haystack. And you can pre-train them on lots of logs, and you don't need labels. And that's a good thing because there aren't a lot of good ones out there in cybersecurity. So accuracy, where you can run this on flow logs like NetFlow, which tend to be kept around forever in case of bad things happening. But there aren't a lot of good indicators on them today. You can run something like our Tempo log LM on them, and it'll tell you the high degree of accuracy if something looks anomalous. And that is just the beginning of the process. I understand that, but it's a good start, a better understanding of whether something should be investigated further.
Yeah, yeah. And it's interesting too, because I feel like for cybersecurity, and I'm coming up with an observation and you tell me if it's true, but in a lot of my reading, like on the, I'll say the hacker side of this, right? A lot of it is more around how can I build tools and have these tools, attack faster, right? So it's about velocity, probably more so than intelligence, right? It's like, how do I increase those? But when it comes to the defensive side of it, it is more what we have talked about. It's like, how do I, because all the data may be there somewhere, but I think the classic problems has been, how do you raise the signals fast enough? How do you get signal to noise ratio to a point where, because the attacks are coming in faster, now the discovery needs to be faster? Does that make sense? And is that valid?
Yes, 100%. And I was going to pick up on, I talked a little bit about accuracy. Turns out, and this is one of the big ahas for me at least, was adaptability is at least as important as accuracy. So you can get a mishmash, which is a technical term for what's running out there, thousands of rules and some ML, and be really accurate until the world changes, until your environment changes. Hey, and if you're running an environment in which you don't want every change to have to go through security, and security to have to say, like, don't rehome the IPs because it'll break all my indicators. You need to go with something that is a lot more adaptable. It's also true that, and we may get to this, but we can run our log LM Tempo as a native app on Snowflake. So just think about what that means. We don't have the environment. You bring the app into your environment. The model has not been pre-trained at all in your environment. So existing ML systems, which can get to be quite accurate, tend to be fairly brittle and tightly tuned to a environment. We're building a foundation model for cyber. So building, I'm not saying it's totally built. It is a process, but adaptability, so-called zero-shot learning, and the ability to fine-tune in minutes or an hour, as opposed to a 3-month professional services engagement, that's what we're about. And it's 100%. Again, that's my second amen, Bubba, here. It's exactly that. Accuracy is great, but if you sneeze in your environment or humans do human things and it changes, can your model adapt to that new world?
Yeah, and I think that's the single biggest thing that I think and I want to talk, like, dig into the foundational models here for a little bit. I think that adaptability and that ability to take the training and figure out new things, but somehow not go into that, to use the generative AI side, not hallucinate all at the same time. Like, it becomes a fine line of like, hey, I need to go figure that out, but at the same time, I can't make things up. And so let's talk about that, because you actually wrote a really good blog recently on cybersecurity models, and it's this concept of foundational models. But I think when everyone hears foundational model, they think of like the Gen AI foundational models or frontier models or LLMs and Gen AI. And so let's actually step back for a second and go, okay, when we talk about cybersecurity foundational models, it is different.
Mm-hmm.
And is it just as simply as it is written in a way it doesn't hallucinate, or is there other pieces of this that the listeners need to understand when it comes to the differences in that foundation model?
I guess I would pick up on a few things. One is, yes, it's encoder only. So generative models are decoder. This is encoder only. It's a cousin, but it just cannot hallucinate. So that's important to know. But the other is that while NetFlow and some of these logs are standardized and they are human readable, they're not Shakespeare. Right? So how do you interpret the results is quite important. And there we will use some Gen AI. The Gen AI we will use is to map the results back to something that the humans understand. So in the cybersecurity world, MITRE ATT&CK patterns or tactics and techniques are kind of a lingua franca. And so we actually do use some Gen AI. We also build some of this into the model so that it'll spit out, hey, here's the nearness of fit to a given MITRE ATT&CK pattern, or here are the MITRE ATT&CK patterns with a decent nearness of fit, depending on how you want to look at it. So yeah, you have to translate it back into human readable stuff. Although, to be honest, it's amazing how many people in cyber can just read logs like it. It's like Matrix-like. But we're obviously trying to augment the humans and translate it back into a set of constructs they understand. And we're now, this is not GA, but we're now working on enabling them to author very simply a whitelist of sequences. So this set of sequences I want to be especially alerted on, right? Platinum ports, but, patterns. And that could come from your Mandiant subscription or from your threat intelligence subscription. Like, we've heard that banks are getting targeted in this way. If you see this pattern, call everybody, right? Or tell my SIM to call everyone, or vice versa. This is me hacking on this. Don't worry about it. And so a whitelist versus a platinum port escalation.
Sure,
but yeah, it's a foundation model. You need the data. I mean, the diversity of the data is all important, of course. And what we saw is transformer models. So the same underlying tech are transformers and attention for language models in our log LM. They can handle masses of information. So they're a neural net that you can, exercise a lot of GPUs, train. Yeah. So that's a lot of it. It's back to what you were saying before. It's, getting through the needle in the finding the needle in the haystack. It's just the sheer force of these models, their ability to handle, hundreds of billions of rows in the pre-training, condense that down onto something that'll run in your Snowflake on a single CPU. That's a lot of the magic here.
Now, it also occurred to me because I feel like, again, this is a newer concept to me. I'm more familiar with the Gen AI and the LLMs of the world. Let's say a customer, wants to implement this, organization is looking at this. And of course the goal is, you just kind of plop it in and it runs kind of thing. But is there the equivalent of fine tuning or RAG that needs to happen per environment? Or how do you tweak and tune it for unique organizational needs? Yes.
Yeah. Fine tuning. And there's a couple of ways that's done, but one of them is available on Snowflake today. You don't have to run us on Snowflake, I should say. So we haven't talked about our design partner, BNY, Bank of New York, who I still have to Google it every now and then to make sure the numbers are right. But I mean, $50 trillion of custodial assets. So definitely a strategically important bank or financial institution. They do use us a bit on Snowflake, but the design partnership has been all on premise, and it deploys easily on premise in a Kubernetes environment. But then, there's a couple ways to do fine tuning. You can fine tune the foundation model, or you can fine tune the classifiers. And the classifiers, basically do some of the mapping, et cetera, on top. And or you could fine tune even downstream, as I was saying before, in a RAG-like way as well.
Fantastic. And let me ask you this, because I also understand, like, okay, there's like, okay, is it on-prem? Is it SaaS? Is it, there's locations, but there's also, where does it sit in the workflow, if you will? And so is this something like in a Snowflake instance, it sits like next to the data lake and it's like the next step away, or like I'll use the term supply chain, right? Like when the pieces feed from one to the other, the inputs and the outputs, where does this actually sit within the organization?
Yeah, on or in or next to the, as you said, the security data lake. And I think you appreciate this. One of the first questions we ask when somebody reaches out, or when we have a first meeting, is, what is your security data lake? And there's never one answer. And any of these enterprises, there's multiple ones. But next to that, but crucially upstream from your SIEM or your SOC tools. We're not saying throw that away at all. And in fact, many folks are now, of course, buying AI to help them, go through the thousands of alerts and incidents they get in their environment. We're upstream from that. We want to give you the alert that you definitely want to pay attention to and keep that false positive rate down, keep the false negative rate really down, feed into your SIEM, and again, speak the language of your SOC, translate back into MITRE, et cetera. So it's sort of on the data lake and upstream from your SIEM is where we sit.
Sure. Okay. And final question. Because I think whenever we talk about security tools, or we actually talk about like automation or remediation kind of things, there's always like different levels, if you will, of like at the very most base level, I'm going to go through a whole bunch of information and I'm going to bubble up things and kind of go, hey, this is interesting. You might want to take a look. Then there is the next step, which is like, hey, this is kind of interesting. I'm going to go take a look and I'm going to come up with some kind of root cause for you. And then there is the, in AI world, it would be the agentic AI of the world of like, I'm actually going to take the action now. Right. And so where are we at today, and where do you think we are in the future when it comes to cybersecurity versus AI? Do you think we'll ever get to the agentic level of that, or do you think CISOs and practitioners will be like, no, absolutely not. I don't want anything automated?
And regulators. That's the other.
Fair. Absolutely. Probably more regulators than anything else, right?
Yeah. And or insurance providers for the CISOs we talked about before, right? Yeah. So, no, I think folks are coming at it from both directions. The one sort of nugget I would leave here is that we take straw and spin it into gold. The gold is not just we think something is going awry here. The gold are the embeddings themselves. So if you look at the LLM ecosystem, there's a lot around, hey, you just pick up this embedding model, it creates your embeddings, then you do cool stuff with it. We had to invent all that in security, but I do think that there will eventually be a number of tools, some of which we're building, that make sense, that use the underlying embeddings, which are basically 768 dimensional vectors that have turned your logs into a 10th or 100% of the size, but with more semantic sense built into them, that are going to use those embeddings for GRC, i.e. regulatory reporting use cases, for forensics, RCA use cases. So while job one for us is to tell your SOC if something is going awry as a defense in depth like solution and augmentation of what you have, related right next to that is, okay, yeah, and let's say something has gone awry. How do I use information we provide and other information to actually get to root cause much, much faster? And I do think we'll play a part in that, but I also think agentic will, but humans will have to be in the loop because, if nothing else, not to name names, but, you can look at the headlines from the last couple of years. Security can be an attack vector, right? So the odds of a CISO or regulators allowing fully autonomous security operations in the short term is pretty low. You gotta really, really, really be transparent.
Yeah, makes perfect sense. And I think that's just a general theme of AI overall, I think there's some folks that are super leaning in and want that agentic, I want it to just do everything for me kind of vision. But I think in practical terms, we're in that co-pilot scenario of humans in the loop and humans having final approval, and it is, a partner more than anything else.
And we, of course, have decided to focus on an area where, although I joked about, the Matrix human log scanners, nobody can read a billion logs and tell you what's going wrong. And so, we've chose very consciously to dive into that deep end of the pool. But I do think somehow that the twain shall meet, and we will have more of a closed loop learning environment because we have to. We're being pantsed. Let me put it that way, by attackers who are sitting there running. They literally will run. If you're a decent enterprise, they probably have a version of your environment, your CrowdStrike indicators, your Defender logs, whatever, running in their environment, and they're evolving attacks against you. So this is, so we have to evolve faster as an industry, and I do think deep learning plays an important role.
No, that's fantastic. I think that's a good place for us to stop today, Evan. Final question: if anyone is out there is interested in this, what's the best place to kind of learn more and get started?
Well, we do blog, and we try to make them substantive, and you can find that on DeepTempo.ai. That said, in the time that it took you to hear our dulcet tones, you could have tried it out on Snowflake. So go give it a shot. You can search for Tempo, DeepTempo, et cetera, on the marketplace there. And we do have some demo data you can play with as well.
Fantastic. All right, Evan. Well, thank you very much for your time this week. And everyone out there, thank you very much for listening this week. If you enjoy the show, please tell a friend. Please leave us a review wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, if you have feedback, we're always available at show@thecloudcast.net. On behalf of Brian and myself, thank you everyone for listening this week, and we will talk to everyone next week.
Thank you for listening to The Cloudcast. Please visit thecloudcast.net to find more shows, show notes, videos, and everything social media.